This video is really going to help you make a mindset shift. And it was inspired by something that I recently was going through. I had some stuff that I was working through. So even as someone who teaches this, I'm not immune to it. None of us are. But when you've done the work, you have the tools to move through things much quicker and with much more ease. So let's get into this video because I truly feel it will help you. So your minds tend to cling to the familiar, even when the familiar is what's keeping you stuck. It's like standing in a dark room, seeing just a sliver of light through the door, but instead of stepping towards it, you stay where you are, convinced that what's out there might be worse than the dark that you know. And that's understandable. When life has conditioned you to expect the worst, even hope can feel like a risk. But what if instead of fearing that light, you got curious about it? What if instead of assuming it's another disappointment waiting to happen, you allowed yourself to wonder, what if it's something better? This is how the mind works. It's wired for survival, not necessarily for happiness. And that's why making a mindset shift can feel uncomfortable, even terrifying for some, because stepping into the unknown, even if it has the potential to change your life, feels risky. But what if the real risk is staying exactly where you are? Shifting your mindset isn't about forcing positivity or ignoring reality. It's about changing the way you interpret what happens to you. It's about recognizing that the thoughts that you've been running on, thoughts that tell you that you're not capable, that things never work out for you, that you will always feel this way, are just that, thoughts, not truths. So I don't know if you've ever been in your swimming pool and you dip your hands in there and the water feels really cold and you're hesitant about jumping in. And so you jump in anyway and it's freezing, but you give it a few moments and your body adjusts, right? So what felt uncomfortable at first becomes natural. And this is exactly how a mindset shift works. At first, it's unfamiliar, maybe unsettling, but the more you lean into it, the more your mind begins to adapt. So, how do we start? How do we take that first step out of the dark room, through the door, and into something new? Well, first is awareness. You cannot change what you don't acknowledge. Studies show that we spend 90 to 95% of our days on autopilot, reacting to situations without even realizing the beliefs that are driving those reactions. The next time you catch yourself thinking, this always happens to me, or I'll never get ahead, and nothing ever goes right for me, or even that famous saying, when it rains, it pours. Pause and ask yourself, where did that thought come from? Is it even true? Because most of the time, it isn't. It's just a story that you've been telling yourself for years. And once you see the story for what it is, the next step is to interrupt the pattern. Your brain is efficient. It repeats what it knows. So if you spent years thinking in a certain way, your brain will keep serving you those same thoughts. But the moment you consciously interrupt the pattern, whether it's by questioning it, challenging it, or even physically doing something different, you create space for something new. For instance, think about when you've been lost in thought and maybe someone suddenly called your name. You were daydreaming and someone called your name. That split second pulls you out of your mental loop. And that's what we need to do with our negative thought patterns. We catch it, we stop it, and we replace it. So you've caught the thought, you've interrupted it. Now what? This is where you get to choose. Instead of letting your mind default to old narratives, you replace them with something that actually serves you. Here's the thing, this isn't about forcing positive affirmations that you don't believe. It's about introducing a perspective that feels just slightly better than where you were before. For example, if your mind says, I'll never get out of this situation, don't try to jump straight away to everything is amazing and wonderful and perfect. That's too far of a leap, and your brain won't buy it. Instead, shift slightly. Maybe say, maybe things can improve. Maybe I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm open to finding them. See what we're doing here? We're not forcing blind optimism. We are opening the door just a little so that new possibilities have a chance to come in. And here's why this matters. Because your brain is wired to seek patterns. If you spent years reinforcing negative thoughts, your neural pathways are deeply ingrained. But when you introduce even the smallest shift in perspective, you start creating new connections. Over time, your brain learns to recognize these new pathways, making it easier to choose more empowering thoughts. It's like strengthening a new muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So now, once you've shifted the thought, don't just leave it there. Let your thought experience it. Your emotions are what helps rewire the brain. So take a moment, breathe in this new possibility, and instead of just thinking differently, notice how it feels to consider something new. For example, if you went from nothing ever works out for me to maybe things can improve, pause. What would it be like if that were true? Maybe you feel maybe you feel lighter, or a little more open. Maybe there's a small sense of relief. Whatever comes, just whatever comes up, just notice it. Your subconscious mind doesn't change through words alone. It responds to feelings as well. And that's why simply repeating affirmations without emotion doesn't work. But when you introduce a new thought and actually let yourself experience even a small shift, your brain starts to take notice. So the key here is repetition. The brain learns through experience, but it also learns through consistency. Think of it like learning to play an instrument. At first, your hands don't quite know where to go and it feels awkward. But the more you practice, the smoother it becomes. Eventually, your fingers just know what to do without you even thinking about it. It's the same with your thoughts. At first, shifting will feel unfamiliar, but over time, your brain will start making that shift naturally. Instead of defaulting to negativity, it will begin exploring new possibilities on its own. So now that you have some tools to help you shift your mindset, the question is, what are you going to do with these tools? Are you willing to challenge the thoughts that have kept you stuck? Are you ready to break the cycle and create something new, I want you to really sit with this. Notice the thoughts that come up. Do they push you forward or do they hold you back? Because the moment you start questioning them, the moment you decide to take back control, that's when everything shifts. Let me know in the comments below, what's one thought that you've been holding on to that you're ready to challenge? And if this video resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's start shifting together. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, follow, and subscribe depending on which platform you're watching from. And I will see you next time.